All right. So this is the public issue triage for the Habitat Project week of July 11th, 2017. I'm going to go ahead and post the query for those of you who would like to follow along. That'll be in the general channel on Slack. And the other thing I'm going to do is make sure that I've got my note-taking utensils here. And by utensils, I mean Vim. All right. Ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Hopefully I share the right thing.
Well, it looks about right. I see issues.
Yeah.
I see the same.
All right, perfect. That looks right. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Great. So today we're going to start with number 2683. Go ahead and pull that up. Yep.
This might possibly be something that could be pulled into the project view potentially. I'm pretty sure this is it's being worked on.
Yeah, I think that it is. I think we just haven't added it into the project page. So let's just go ahead and add it in there. And that'll then it can get triaged. I think either way, we can go ahead and put that in.
Yeah.
And one down. All right, 2680 is the second one we're going to check. I'll give everybody a second to read that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Also, when you start your advocating for something with SVC ADM, I'm kind of on board a bit.
Right.
Because I did an audit of some of these supervisors way back, and that was most definitely one of them. And they had a few interesting things. And yeah, one was, I think you're right, like a blocking mode for that.
Right. SVC ADM has pretty good user experience as well. I think that, yeah, this is something we should do. Also, it looks like we have a PR related to this already, which means for now, I think I'm going to add this into Help Wanted. I think we could probably get behind this.
And I think the arguments are pretty good that especially automating around it in configuration management tools, scripts, and those kinds of things. It's pretty useful. It's one thing that has frustrated me sometimes with even systemd is unless I'm doing it totally wrong, there's a lot, everything's async. So I sometimes am not sure what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, having eventual consistency is great. Being able to have eventual consistency and a synchronous start and stop is even better. I mean, I'm sure that there are use cases out there where that would be important to have. Otherwise, tools like SVC ADM wouldn't support the feature flag, right? All right. So I've gone ahead and labeled that as Help Wanted. As far as effort level.
Well, I mean, now it'll be interesting to look through the first pass implementation, because there's the way we've sort of done it to this point, it was sort of async by the nature of us doing something that the supervisor then picks up, like the side effects to like tell it what to do.
Yeah.
So I always figured there'd be some like replumbing, you know, it's like some kind of like IPC eventually that we might need, or I'm not sure, but
yeah, I think that makes sense.
the good news though is the work that Jamie's been doing with this like launcher, like the small thing that can spawn the processes that the supervisor is now sort of like a child of. He may have already done like laid some of the plumbing or the pattern for that.
Yeah. Yep. So we'll want to get on review of that PR and see what that implementation looks like, and we'll go from there. I do think with the launcher that is probably where a bulk of this work will end up getting carved out. So, all right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. 2676. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So this is configurable in Builder itself?
I think that's what he's saying. Maybe
yeah,
we ask for
some already, then we probably should.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would assume this is fine. I'm not really sure if he's, yeah, I guess I don't, I need some clarification on where he's referring to having this be configurable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I could have sworn in our web front end parts, one of the tunables was like some of the, well, at least DNS records for when you click on links where they go. So maybe it's not fully threaded through, but.
All right, and then what I'm going to do is we'll just leave that one for now.
Sounds all right.
Unsorted. Give me 1 second here. I want to make sure I'm updating my. All right, we're going to move on for now to 2671.
Huh.
This is the data directory he has made it available for us to pull down and look at. I would assume this might, I mean, my gut reaction is this might be a legitimate error, legitimate bug, but
it might be. That looks like at the time I think this came in, that was probably the current supervisor. At least it's the current Habitat version, so I presume the supervisor would be the same.
Yeah. Well, this is the pre version, right? This is pre 25.1.
Oh yeah, so it's not like current as of Friday, but probably 12 days ago when Joshua submitted this, that probably was the current version. We did have a bit of a wire level incompatibility between a couple versions of the supervisor. That meant you sort of had to like clean out the data directory, I think, for some old stuff if you like rebooted the newer supervisor. But I would imagine it's on the other side of that. That's probably something we are going to want to look at. One thing that looks interesting is default directory. Oh, I see. 3 nodes. Okay. Never mind. I see 3 directories in here, and I thought, oh, the 3 supervisor instances on one node is running, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. Would you leave a comment that more or less follows your train of thought? And for now, what we'll do is we can add this into accepted minor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can either confirm it, continue not to be able to verify it, or like, you know, like one way or the other, close it like having figured it out, or yeah, we just need somebody to like follow this down.
Yep. Cool. All right. So the next one's going to be 2668. Yeah. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to go ahead and accept that. Because I think Chris is right, and this is a lot of his code, this front end code. So, yeah. Oops, did not mean to do that. All right. All right. Next one is going to be 2666. Yeah, this is definitely also going to be something we need to correct. I think this is a middleman thing, and it's not super delightful. But also, when I've attempted to fix it in the past, I've only made things worse because I am not a front end developer.
I experienced this several times. Yeah. Was like, oh, these tabs are cool, but I want to actually read the blog post. It's underneath them.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and do that. We'll put this into accepted minor. I don't want to assign anybody else to it, but yeah, it's something we need to fix.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to move on to 2664. Yeah, this is a fun one. And I can walk you through it.
Oh no.
So
yes, do that.
Yeah.
I think we both have found this out, and I blocked it out of my brain.
Yeah, and Josh is aware as well. Josh and I had a conversation about it. This is kind of a gnarly issue, in that I don't really know how we're going to solve it. But it is something we are going to need to solve, because at this point, because of the way that Oracle do their version numbers, it's the lexicographical sort that we use for determining the latest version gets all boogered up. And it's effectively like, it'll use these first 2 digits and it'll key off those fine. But the minute that, the rest of these digits get all screwed up, basically. And so effectively what ends up happening is that, like, if you go and do a build of things that are kind of low level or a high level inside of the Java tree of packages, and there's a change that comes down the pipe to the latest JDKs, your stuff explodes. So I don't know who will assign it to. This is a legitimate bug. and I can't remember. I don't remember if the issue is actually in the depot or if it's in the build system.
It could be in both places. So there's two places where like version sorting come in. One is the build system, which at the moment that kind of logic is actually we're like completely using GNU core utils sort, like Unix sort, but
Yeah.
with there's a like numeric sort, or there's like a double dash long flag that does like ABC kind of versioning. That mostly works. And then for everything else, it's not just that build system is in Rust code, and that's in our core package under, I think it's like package ident, and it's how we do the sorting logic.
Yeah.
Now we've got like our version sorting logic with test cases and actually some pretty good documentation for how we're doing the version ordering. And I think we have, I'm trying to remember, we based an awful lot of it either off of RPM's version sorting or Debian's. So the stuff where like you have a dash and then you can do like pre-release stuff like alphas and betas and they come before the actual release.
Right.
And like a lot of those edge case things we're solving for that. It's just in this one case, it's not semver like.
Right.
So it's total lexicographical, which is breaking down, and it's making me wonder how some of the other distros that have a similar logic, how in the world they're dealing with this.
Yep. It would be worth I mean, we're definitely going to have to fix it because we don't require users to have a semver version because of cases like this, obviously. And if we can't support a case like this, then yeah. Anyways, so
I'm kind of thinking like one hack around this is we change. Well, we think of instead of the U, it's a dot, so it's version 8.92, but we could still add the dash 8U92 if we need to preserve that thing. So like it would kind of work. You kind of squint your eyes and think there's sort of a major minor thing in there.
Yeah, I mean, there is, right? Like it definitely 8U131 is the newest package. And I built this last week while we were all at the offsite. And 8U92 is obviously the older version. So
yeah,
I would assume those are kind of minor releases or feature releases within the major 8, right?
I think that's how it worked from what I remember. Okay. I mean, they used to be a lot worse, to be honest. The versions of Java were like even more kind of bizarre. This is maybe slightly better, but
yeah, most definitely. But we'll get on top of that one. So we have this package splits from last week. We discussed it. It looks like Jamie actually moved this into accepted minor. Wait. And maybe, well, it's not in there now, but it looks like he added it at one point. So I think this is generally the idea of trying to, it'll probably be a build service optimization and a build system optimization. But generally the idea is, for those of you who didn't see last week's call, generally the idea is like we don't necessarily want to rebuild Postgres 3 times to get the binary, the documents, and like the libs, right? Really what we want is to be able to compile those one time, split the things out that we want to split out into their own separate packages, and have those live in their own separate packages appropriately linked and the like. And this is kind of the way that Arch Pacman packages handle it. So I think for now, I'll follow back up with Jamie and see if he intentionally added this into accepted minor. And if not, for those of you that are watching, if you have any feelings on this, please feel free to comment on the RFC. And what we'll do for now is we'll just continue along from here.
It'll be a design exercise for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a pretty extensive change, I think.
Yeah.
It should theoretically not be a breaking change, but it would definitely be a large change.
Yeah.
All right, 2447 is the next.
Yeah, I talked with Seth about this just before ChefConf, I think, and I really, oh yeah, okay, so he says that, and I really kind of like it. And I think he lays it out reasonably well in the top, that we really only have kind of one way that we shut our child processes down, which is with the term. And sometimes if you're a particularly well-behaving service, you might want to like perhaps signal it, and what it's going to do is like drain connections or something.
Right. Yeah, I think that is a super good feature.
I mean, I'd also like, you could think about, like, we could extend this idea to, you could optionally set the, you know, I don't know, the reconfigure signal or something that like, rather than having to craft your own like reconfigure hook that just does the kill and then has to get the process ID, is if there was a way just in the data you could say like, just send a sig hup when I have a reconfigure, and even if it generated the hook for you, that would be pretty darn nice.
Yeah, actually, that'd be great.
So I don't know. This just opened up a world of interesting when this came up.
So I wonder, in this case, like, are we? This is probably a moderate difficulty or effort level on this, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment in our very near future with some of this, with this launcher work, I don't think it's going to necessarily be harder. It will be very different for the code base than it is at the moment. It may hopefully be a little bit easier. We'll have to see.
I guess the question is this something that we feel like should go onto our backlog? Is this something we should do, or something that we should put in help wanted for now and revisit at the end of the month?
Let's see. Given that's only a few weeks, we could do that. What I've got in the back of my mind is we are starting some work into like working with Kubernetes specifically, and some of these other scheduler environments. And I know even Docker usually has a way to say this is how you can kill the container, the process in the container.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what I have in the back of my mind, that some of that expressiveness in some of these runtimes might be beneficial if they could like sort of seep down into the habitat supervisor.
Yeah,
so this might become like a much more pressing, interesting like use case.
Right, in the next few weeks.
Because yeah, right now even the signaling, like we send a term, which is, it's a little abrupt. But we also like having the notion of a timeout is also kind of an interesting idea, that if the thing hasn't died, then like that's when you could take more drastic measures, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I like the concept at least. So good. Let's move along from there to 2444. This to me feels like a no-brainer, but there's another question. There was a question here, right? We were kind of talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
We talked about this last week. We didn't sort this, but you and I had a conversation offline about this. But the idea being that like right now you end up having to create Studio RC files in any directory that any specific directory.
That's right. Yeah.
But what we really want is for you to be able to put your Studio RC file in one place and always have that loaded into any studio.
Yeah. That would be if I wanted to do something consistently, that's where I would want it to be. Because I can't think of a lot of situations where I might actually want my Studio RC to be committed to my code base in the repo, unless it was something like that's the way that we get our AWS keys inside because we need that for something in the build thing. Like that can be a way to shuttle credentials into a studio. So it may have a legit use case, but if it's just for convenience that like I like these things, I would want that in my home like Studio RC.
Yep.
So that would be kind of that would be nice.
Yeah, some kind of precedence is not a problem either. I do think having one is definitely ideal. I don't know whether or not we will be taking this on the immediate. Do you
have any? Yeah, I mean, perhaps at some point. I'm just thinking on the implementation side, to have that like global Studio RC. The hardest part is how do you deal with it being in a global place and locally?
Right.
Which one exactly wins? My guess is if you put it in the repo, that's a tighter match. So like, but I don't think it could be like a combination. It would be one or the other. And the other problem with this in the home space right now is that doesn't get linked, or like that doesn't get mounted into the studio.
Right.
So perhaps that might have to be copied in or something. And then where does that go? Because you wouldn't want to copy that into the thing that's being file mounted in, because then you might have overridden something. And so there's a few weird things there. But I've had to do very weird things for what I'm trying to land right now around sharing artifact cache directories. There's an element of insanity that I'm trying to sort out. That's a similar thing of like, I want to mount in something under .hab. And it's kind of working, but I'm just thinking of doing that one more time. It's starting to get crazy. I mean, if it's a tiny little file, then that might be something that like we copy it into like roots home or something in the studio and source it from there or something, or like get it not in the /source directory. Or we kind of do that with keys, where it's like it's easier to make a copy into the studio and it feels a little bit safer. It's making me wonder if we have a way to, say, disable this behavior. I don't recall if we do. The downside of Studio RC is it's a completely out-of-band, user customizable way to break the isolation of the studio. I could put my Studio RC to put stuff into the studio in a different way that might, when I give you the same plan, you build it in your studio, it might not actually run, and I might not know that. And that's the biggest unfortunate downside. But
yeah, well, we can come back and revisit the implementation details. I do think the feature is the right thing. Like, we want people to be able to do this, and so right now, our Docker users, people who are on Mac or Windows who are entering the studio, they actually can do a lot of this stuff right now with the have Docker options environment variable.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just Linux users who are a little bit more limited because we can't just, we have no straightforward API for just dumping random arbitrary commands or stuff into the studio. Right, that's kind of the long and the short of it. But, cool. So that was 2444. Let's move on to 2420. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. This is also, there's a related one, which is what is it, sys.ip. That's like the IP that the supervisor's bound to and listening on. That's all cool, but because maybe that's, I have an internal network. But what if I want my web server, the service it's running, to be on the outer network because that's exposed to the internet?
Right.
Right now, you can't really separate those two.
Yep.
And we're eventually probably going to, we'll have something pressing enough where we're going to probably need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like for our users right now who are already in hybrid cloud mode, people have already seen this somewhat, right? For people who are running Habitat packages on Linux hosts, because we don't have any way to, unless this has changed recently, which is also possible, but I haven't seen it change. But specifically, like if you have 4 hardware interfaces, 4 network metal interfaces on a metal box, Habitat doesn't know what to do with that. It's going to pick the first interface.
Well, so we've got this little trick that we try to figure out what is likely your egress interface, like what your egress route would be to the internet, and that's the one that we try to pick.
Okay.
And we do that with an interesting UDP trick that doesn't actually talk to the internet.
Awesome.
But that's how we're getting the sys IP like by default. And it's usually the one that like that would be the hopefully the network route and the interface associated with that you would go out to the internet for. But that's why I think some vagrant users sometimes have problems. Is the one they maybe want to talk to is actually the what is it, the shared NAT network with your Mac or with your Windows workstation, whereas there's another one that like goes out to the internet. So they're not always the same. There's usually like at least 2 networks floating around in Vagrant. So.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yep. Yeah, I mean, and yeah. So, and on a host, if you're a Linux host that's running yeah. I mean, anyways, we don't need to get into that. Basically, yeah, we should do this. We'll probably do this in the future. I would almost guarantee we're going to need something like this, especially when we start moving more and more into Kubernetes land. It's possible that this gets resolved. So,
I mean, if I was to wave my magic wand and say what I would want, maybe as a user, I just don't know how possible it is I'd love to say, yeah, I want it on like EN0.
Right.
Like, what's the IP address? What's the actual thing? Like, I don't know. It's just put it on EN0. But that has now a relationship to a lot of other stuff. But I'll say that.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Yeah. Looks like this got moved around. Removed from accept. So this is actually. I wonder why.
I think we might have done the version by hand, perhaps. So I'm looking at the date, which is this was, I think, right around our ChefConf time. So this is right around when Builder was like the launch was being announced. So we did have a lot of stuff going on, and some of that I think was we had existing core packages, and we were trying to figure out, do we need to make the, like in the Builder interface, do we need to make like the project for each so that we could eventually wire that up for the like webhook trigger restart thing.
Yeah.
And what would happen if I just created my origin and uploaded a package? Do I get a project or not by default? Rather than going into the user interface and saying make me a new project and it's this thing, and then uploading something and they somehow match. So it does say for the short term we need some script. And then there's nothing that's closed it off. I feel like we may have done this. Like our script might have been something we didn't commit anywhere, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, maybe that's why it got removed from an acceptance. So what I'm going to do for now is add a builder label, a chore label, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put this back on the project board.
Okay.
And then we can sort that out as far as getting it into the backlog or whatever later on.
Yeah, as I'm looking at it, I have this feeling we didn't do it.
Yep. All right, so the next one is 2405. Awesome. Related to 2590. Yeah, okay, great. Perfect. And the next one's going to be 2397. Ah.
Oh, yeah, this is totally... They're both correct. Both of these comments are indeed correct.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess what we should probably do. So this is related to. So right now, the website, right? We have an acceptance website, but it runs on Netlify.
Right.
So the question is whether or not we can make Netlify talk to the depot, the acceptance depot.
Right. And we may be able to configure builder to point there. So yeah, that's one way we could look at fixing that.
Or
I guess the other thing we could do is make acceptance look completely like production and host it similarly.
Yeah, which is probably ideal. We turned up Netlify because it was early on when I started. It was a really kind of a necessary thing. We just needed a way to be able to test those PRs as we were kind of iterating on that rapidly.
And it's pretty nice as a service.
Yeah, it's a fantastic service. But yeah, so let me leave a little comment here real quick.
Yeah. There will be chores associated if we like make the match. I think we've been like chasing down an acceptance only SSL cert is one thing. To make it look like production with the same wiring and everything is putting the website probably through Fastly as well. So there may or may not be extra costs associated with it. I'm not sure, but
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add because I think this is actually not an issue with Builder, but an issue with the acceptance website. And it is something we're going to have to take on.
Yeah.
Basically, no matter what, if we're looking to be positive about our proactive about our acceptance and our CI stuff. So cool. That was 2397. Let's move on to 2396.
I don't remember writing this.
Yeah, I mean,
I may have ferried this along, and this doesn't sound like I would love to take credit for the idea. I think I heard this from somebody and sounded like a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense, and also would cut down on some of those simple errors, simple build time errors that we could just really easily clean out. So
yeah, in our build system, we do have this utility tool called RQ, and I can't remember what that stands for. If you've used JQ before for doing JSON querying kind of stuff, it's like that, except it supports, RQ supports JSON, TOML, like protobufs, a whole bunch of things.
Oh,
so
wow.
around, we use it to validate that the exporting like ports are like an integer value and that kind of thing. So I think what we'd be doing in the build thing is adding a step to see if you have a default.toml, is we're using the RQ command to like, you can like basically read in toml, and if it fails non-zero, then like it's invalid and die right there. So this could be in help wanted. I think it's in the realm of easy, and it would really help people. So this is, I think, one of those mentorable things potentially for somebody.
Yeah, that could be great. It's going to be mostly shell.
Yes, yeah.
So that's a really good starter PR if anybody's looking for something to get involved in or is curious about the build system.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to 2390.
Ooh. Oh my gosh, I so agree with this. I'm getting ready to do this work.
Right.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think the details at the bottom get into the other issue, which is the degree to which we need root permissions to do the studio stuff, which I mean, I'm way more sympathetic to a year on. I think in Studio's future, there might be that world where you need less root privileges. It was at the time of launch, we only really had one studio on one platform without knowing what the rest are going to look like. How much of the studio code is like the same across, say, a Mac and FreeBSD?
Right.
I am starting to. I think as we're starting to, like we did the Windows work and doing some speculative stuff on other things, it's maybe less likely that we can always count on chroot everywhere, which may mean we need some potentially platform different tweaks. Anyways, I'm coming around on that idea that perhaps one day there might be on Linux the unshare version.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. The area in the code base this lives it's mostly shell, right?
It is mostly shell. Yes, yeah. At least for the like the file system mounts and stuff, or that's mostly what I'm focused on in this one. Is yes, and this is sure, but even borderline bug. This is the reason that I want to come back and finish this this work up. Is I I think the theory being once you're done with the studio and you're outside of it or the build has finished, anything that we like mounted to get you into that context, we should be able to like unmount and get you out of that.
Yeah.
So you're not left with bind mounts around, which is one of the sources of some of those danger areas around the studio cleanup. This is just one more way to make it much safer.
Yep.
And that's why I'm like highly motivated to look at this.
Yeah. I'm gonna go put that. I'm gonna put that in accepted because
yeah,
I would assume. I mean, that's not likely to be something that an external drive-by contributor wants to tackle.
It might be a little trickier, and I'm adding more trickiness now because I'm adding one more amount in there. But I'm trying to orient the code so that it's easier to know where we're gonna like back out of that.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's go ahead and do 2376. Yeah. I feel like this.
Maybe yeah. Oops.
Yeah, I think this could be considered a bug.
I've been meaning to fix this pretty much since our launch, so we're about a year on. Is this was one reason why I didn't call it Symlink. I called it BinLink because I had this feeling there might be a little more to it one day. I think perhaps the behavior we need is rather than, you know, a Symlink is actually a small script, or at least have a mode of BinLink where you can drop a script, and what it would do is export your path and stuff. So it would be much more like calling have package exec. Like that's the behavior that I think most people want. Right. So you can call it directly. And I don't think that's impossible. It just means if you were to drop something like that, you might now need a dependency on like a shell, like a BusyBox might need to be around now.
Maybe. I mean, like I would assume it's possible to, like we say that we're creating a symlink, but it's possible to lay down a wrapper that points to the right thing, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that's kind of what I want to do. The problem is, what is the shebang on that script? And like, you could just say bin.sh and cross your fingers and hope that something there will work. Or the other thing that it could do is also just ensure that BusyBox static is around when you're doing that bin link, so that it can use that one explicitly. And like that would have, there'd be like no subshells into Habland. It would just bake everything in with absolute paths, so it would be completely clear what it's doing. It could probably even stamp the path down, so like it would be super clear.
Is this something that we're gonna try and investigate?
It's always been on my backlist of I'd like to fix that one day, but I mean it doesn't have to be on my backlist. It's gonna involve, there's a few like strange questions, but I don't think it's an impossible task. Yeah, that's probably all right for the moment.
All right, cool.
It's mostly gonna be Rust code. There's probably some generation of some shell stuff though. That'll be interesting.
All right. Yeah, that could be a fun one.
Yeah.
Great. So let's do one more. 2376. So we're moving on to 2375.
Oh, cool. Like dust. Like it actually completes it with the literal open angle bracket dester. That's not what I would have expected. Yeah.
Is it not what you would have expected?
Or yeah, like, I definitely would have expected a directory, not the usage token coming back at me.
Yeah.
I guess I've not tried that. That's not really what I would want.
Is that not? I mean, is that not like forgive me here because I haven't spent a lot of time in clap and looking at clap, but is that not I feel like that is the expected behavior, isn't it? Like, how could have package bin link dest autocomplete like, I don't know.
Or the way I was reading it is you type that in the dest and then a space and then you hit tab, and what it completes with is like open angle bracket dest underscore dir close angle bracket.
Right.
When what I would expect is a directory listing.
Okay. Got it.
Like the file thing, so I could start to type slash, I don't know.
Right. So it should give you basically the directories in your present working scope or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I will say I was trying this with Habo 25.1, so the current one. Wait, I'm not in a studio though. This is probably entirely the reason why. Am I in a studio anywhere? I don't think I am at the moment.
I have one I can drop into.
Like, wouldn't it be awesome if that just had fixed itself somehow?
Let's see.
No, yeah, I'm seeing what he was seeing.
Oh yeah.
It's like, that's super cool, but I would rather tab complete real directories.
Yeah, but like, so the question is, does clap have any knowledge of does the clap auto completion actually bother with that specific? I don't know. Like,
that's a good question. I mean, I guess I would assume, like, from usage stuff that is just a token. It's not like a literal value.
Right.
So if I was doing the tab completion, I would say, like, you're going to be just tab completing what your shell and readline gives to you. So like directories or commands or that kind of thing.
Right.
And it looks like it's like maybe thinking that token variable is actually like a literal value. I don't know. I guess, like, to be honest, there are not many times where I am actually using that tab completion. I don't
ever use the tab completion for the commands. But
this is curious because I use other tab completion like a lot, so I don't know what that says. This might be me knowing it well enough, and I've tried to optimize for myself to have short commands, and maybe that's not how most people would use it. So I don't know, like, I might be a terrible user as a result.
Yeah. Well, I'll put this in help wanted. This would be probably a pretty easy one for somebody if they feel like just kind of trying to figure out what the cause of that is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it getting prioritized, but I do think that it would be an easy one for somebody to get started. It'd be a nice factor PR.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2364 will be the last one we do. This is an old version. Yeah, I guess.
This is interesting. I would have to go back to the code. Jamie's got a bug on it, so I would take him at his word that it might be a bug. But I'm wondering what our state machine is for when exactly post run is supposed to run versus when it's actually running.
Yeah, and I feel like this is May, so relatively recent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any major changes that have happened in the supervisor bits, so this probably still exists. It's probably still an issue.
Yeah, we should definitely take a look. Post run's interesting because everything in like the supervisor service state machine is like, it's all good. We've run the thing that's working fine. Now we'll try this other thing now that it is running. oh, it's having a weird time. It's kind of like a health check, like it's running in parallel to something that's successfully running. So what do you do with it if it doesn't work? And it would not surprise me if we haven't like 100% thought that through. Like it might be like, we try once and it either succeeds or fails, and we could care less about what the exit is, so there's no retrying. And maybe what we need is like in queuing a certain number of retries before we completely give up or something.
Maybe. Okay. Great. We got through a ton.
We did.
A whole ton of them. So that's great. And let me go ahead and refresh here. So we've got, yeah, great. So we'll probably, we're within sight of having everything triaged next week, which should enable us to spend some more time triaging issues in core plans. And aside from triaging issues in core plans, maybe doing some code review for open PRs from external contributors.
Yeah.
Either way, we'll let me stop my screen share here. If I can figure out how. It's so confusing. All right, so that's it for today. We're going to call it quits. And thanks everybody who's, I guess, watching. And if you have any questions, feel free to ping us in Slack or update your issues in GitHub. So thanks everyone.
All right, thank you.